Hey, you nerds! Welcome back to the most magically delicious channel on YouTube, the 1138 Nerd Herd. This is the channel where we review, discuss, talk about, and debate comic books, all things entertainment, and pop culture in general. And as always, I'm your dashing, debonair host, Cascio Pistachio. In this issue, we continue with part 6 of our 14-part review of Black Hammer. Black Hammer is a Dark Horse Comics publication written by fan-favorite author Joyous Jeff Lemire, drawn by dashing Dean Ormston, and colored by stalwart Dave Stewart, with a special shout-out to the Titanic Todd Klein, who has been an absolutely terrific letterer since way back in the 1980s. With all the attention and praise writers, artists, and colorists get, I thought it was high time that someone acknowledged the letterers. Because let's face it, you can't read a comic book if there are no words in it, right? So hail to all the unsung letterers in the world. Know that you are loved and appreciated in the 1138 community. So let's get started. The Golden Age heroes of Spiral City have been banished from existence. Now they pass their time in a quiet farming community, cut off from the world they once knew. Abraham Slam and Barbalian are making connections with the locals, but Golden Gale has been withdrawing deeper into her own misery. Talkie-Walkie has been trying to contact the outside world, with no luck so far. And who knows what the bizarre Colonel Weird and the inscrutable Madame Dragonfly think about their life on Black Hammer Farm. We open issue number 6 on a splash page of Madame Dragonfly breaking the fourth wall, like one of those pulp-era style horror comics. She acknowledges our thirst for dark talks and secrets of the night. She gives warning that the tale we are about to experience is no ordinary nightmare. In keeping with the anthology approach of the series, it is now Madame Dragonfly's turn up at bat. Hers and that vile abode of fear and revulsion she calls home. And as a nice little nod to the collector and all of us, she cautions us to close this magazine, seal it in plastic, and never open it again. Classic. Finally, she welcomes us to the Cabin of Horrors. So we don't know where, Lemire and Klein give us no indication, or when this story takes place. But the cabin was only wood and grass then, secluded and isolated away from prying eyes. A farmer's wife, carrying a baby in her arms, approaches the cabin. From a distance, she could see lights shining through a couple windows. But as she nears enough to knock on the door, the cabin goes completely dark. I wonder what that was about. A deterrent, obviously. Maybe the last line of defense in terms of not keeping people out, but away. And on top of being way out in the boonies somewhere. So the farm girl knocks, and the door creaks open. She needs help, but there's no one inside. Suddenly, a hooded figure with 4 wing-like protrusions on her back appears. She asks the young girl who sent her. The women in the farm girl's village told of impossible things this creature could do. She brought her son who grew ill and died. The villagers say she can bring him back, and the farm girl will do anything to have the boy live again. The decrepit creature warns our farmer's wife that her request bears great cost, because a life must be paid for with a life. And this is similar to the supernatural pathos of Game of Thrones mythology, where only death can pay for life. The withered old crone has lived a long, long life, and has been bound to the foreboding cabin for 1,000 seasons. She's old and tired now. The cabin's many secrets weigh heavily on her weak old shoulders. She asks the farm girl's wife If she gives her what she wants, will the farm girl take ownership of the cabin and all that comes with it? Now, clearly, this is a huge, huge undertaking, and the old witch doesn't give many details about what being tethered to this dank, musty old cabin truly means. The old crone says she's lived for far too long, and judging from the looks of her, it's been several millennia, if not longer. Notice here the recurring theme, as with Golden Gale and the Ancient Wizard in the movie theater, back in issue number 2. He also states that he'd been entrusted or burdened with his incredible powers for an indeterminate period of time, and longs to be free of his dour sentence. And again, with little to no detail, nor without giving Gale any choice in the matter, just bestowed upon her the powers of Zafram. However, in the case of Madame Dragonfly, the old crone at least gives the innocent farm girl some inkling as to the cost of such a task. Now, looking at it, you have this person in desperate need to have this one precious thing back. And in our minds as humans, and under that kind of duress, we often assume nothing could compare to the loss of whatever it is we're slobbering over at the time. You know, I think people can become so obsessed with whatever this precious thing is that they so often dismiss the consequences and the magnitude of making such promises without even bothering to read the fine print. They think that it's nothing compared to the urgency of their heart's desire, and they think that whatever their obligation and commitment thereafter, that they'll be able to handle it as long as they get what they bargained for to begin with. So our future Madame Dragonfly agrees and hands over her baby's corpse. But to her dismay, 2 pair of wings then sprout from her back, just as the ones the old crone is sporting disappear in slivers of mist and smoke. And with a foreboding chuckle, the old witch says, "They suit you well, my dear. You see, the wings come with the cabin. They are the source of our power." But the farmer's wife doesn't understand, and the old woman is beginning to dissolve, turning into green mist or smoke, as she tells the newly appointed Madame Dragonfly to enjoy the cabin, my dear. There will be something new waiting for you behind every door. But the farm girl wants to know about her baby, to which the old crone answers, "All in good time." And the new Madame Dragonfly is left there alone in the cabin, weeping. Wow, man, that's really messed up. This young farm girl goes to this sinister woods witch because she's heard she can do some impossible things to try and bring her dead baby back to life, but is tricked into being bound to some creepy old cabin in the woods and not even getting what she wanted in return. But that's a very to-the-point kind of origin for Madame Dragonfly, and now we have an idea just why she's called that. So back in the present on the Hammer farm, she's sitting out on the porch of her mysterious cabin as Abraham stops by. He claims it's just to say hi, but Dragonfly knows better. He hasn't been out there in months. But Abe is concerned that the Colonel has. She begins to disparage any notion of she and the Colonel being involved romantically, but instead chooses to say they have things in common. When Abe presses her for the details, she laments that all of them look at the 2 of them as damaged goods. Abraham counters, telling her, well, the Colonel helped out a bit with Tammy's dinner, and he corrects her, telling her that if she's seen as such, it's because she set herself up like that. She chose to remove herself from the others and live alone. With her eyes downcast, she says, "The cabin needs me, Abraham. More and more, it needs me." To which he says, "Maybe I should have said this a long time ago, Dragonfly, but so do we." Well, This sheds a little more light on these relationships, and at one time it seems Madame Dragonfly spent much more time with the others in the main house. But as mentioned in issues 1 and 2, both she and Colonel Weird have been spending more and more time away from the others. It's clear to us that Dragonfly and Golden Gale don't get along, yet we still don't know why exactly. It could just be typical female cattiness, or they could have had some major falling out during the course of time they've been locked up there. But in terms of Dragonfly's relationship with the mysterious cabin, I harken back to issue number 4, page 14, panel 3. We get a shot of her sitting in the cabin, hovering over a pentagram or a pinnacle, amidst candles and green smoke. And there were several Frankenstein zombie-looking babies or toddlers milling around. Could that be the need Dragonfly was alluding to? Did she eventually have her dead son Jacob returned to her in some way? If so, are the other children hers too? Or are they an added bonus for her taking over charge of the cabin? Just what is going on in Madame Dragonfly's Cabin of Horrors? And once again, on a somewhat unrelated note, I want to mention how the backdrop of the sky, while in the farm world, is still that same shade of green as Madame Dragonfly's skin. I think I might have mentioned this in either the issue number 2 or 3 review, and I bring it up now because of Dragonfly's comment about she and Weird having things in common. This common thread is that they've both been spending more and more time away from the others. And not in the way that the others are off brooding alone or going into town to engage the locals. Dragonfly and Weird's aloofness seems ominous and sinister. Well, as of last issue, we've seen what Weird's been up to. He's clearly insane and is searching the history of his life to unfrazzle his scrambled brains. To what end, Lemire only knows. It could be to help free the others from their prison, or it could just be so that he can live as normal a life as Abe seems to be seeking out. As for Madame Dragonfly, I still think she has something to do with how they all got trapped in the first place. You may recall in issue number 5 how Colonel Weird was passing through the Parazone and passed by a large green hand that had the faces of each member of the Hammer team on the fingers and thumb. All except for Talkie-Walkie. A symbol that suggested to me that there is some power or principality that literally has a hold on them. I'm not sure how many readers caught that, and if they did, but just blew it off as nothing, seeing it as just one of the many things natural to the Parazone. So next up we have Barbalian, sitting atop the barn, brooding. Golden Gale flies up and joins him. She's noticed he's been acting weird for a few weeks. He tells her he's developed feelings for someone. Excited, she tells him she has too. And it's obvious that she means him, whereas we know Barbie's got a thing for the town pastor. Gale is crushed, and Barbalian is devastated to cause her such pain. He does love her, but he sees her as a child. She corrects him, saying, "That's just it. I'm not." But for Barbalian, it's more than that. And I think we all know what. Not wanting to be patronized, she flies off. Now, this is something that struck me as odd with Barbalian seeing her as he does as a child. I'm forced to wonder if, prior to being imprisoned in this quiet, peaceful world, if any of them ever interacted with her in her civilian identity. Based on how everyone treats her, it would seem they have not. They just seem to know her as an 8-year-old superpowered being who's helped them out over the years. But here's one of those patented Lemire discrepancies. She told Abraham in the first issue she missed having tits. She cusses like a sailor, smokes, and drinks. You'd think one of them would have caught on by now. Especially after 10 long years together. The subject of her disposition, the way she talks and carries herself, you'd think someone in the group might actually question her about these things. I mean, I can understand if, say, they had only been on Hammer Farm for a few weeks or months, but 10 years? 10 years and she never once mentioned any aspect of her origin and true self to any of them? Not even her beloved Barbalian? Initially, a few issues back, I thought it was intriguing that Gale told her origin story to Abe when they were sitting in the truck, because it kind of explained why they all put up this ruse to blend in with the townspeople. But the fact that they've spent so many years together, and only up until issue number 1 do either of the characters begin to break down and reveal their secret origins. It just seems like information like that would have come out well before 10 years had gone by. However, through the convention of storytelling and the development process of a story to be told, I can definitely get the idea that this specific information was intentionally made public for the sake of the readers, so that we could gain insight into the characters in order to make them more relatable and intriguing. All I'm saying is that it seems way, way off for it to take place in the present day of issue number 1, which is 10 years after they got there. I'm saying that, yes, she should have told him, and yes, she should have told him under those exact same circumstances, only it should have come much, much sooner for the characters. I'm thinking if there was some impetus and driving force behind either of them keeping their alter egos secret from one another, it would have soon given way to the long-term outlook of their situation. Meaning that, say after a year in being trapped in this place, they began to, not necessarily to give up hope of escape or rescue, but that it might take a bit longer than they had hoped. And considering they're all heroes and belong to the same brotherhood of peace and justice, they might feel safe enough to come clean about who and what they really are when not being a superhero. So when we come into the second issue and Lemire wants to tell us Gale's backstory, it's all well and good how he executed it, only he should have earmarked it for some time earlier in their past. He could have used a different story marker to compel Gale to think about when she first told Abe her secret. I think it would have had just as much impact as it did and meant just as much, if not more, in terms of how Lemire wanted to dole things out. Like I said, a minor, nitpicky thing on my part, but it stood out to me, so I wanted to see what you all thought. Go ahead and let me have it in the comments below, or tell me your take on that aspect of the story, or if you caught it or not. And let's have a discussion. In the same vein, though, what about all the years they've known and fought alongside one another? Or maybe it's that they were all never officially a team to begin with, but teamed up occasionally 2 or 3 at a time, or as a larger group, but just never formed an official team. But according to the timeline Lemire establishes, most of them fought crime and evil for nearly 50 years or more. They would have had to rarely come in contact with one another in order to be so reticent with their secrets. But then, how about spending the past 10 years together without revealing anything to each other? That's some real dedication to protecting your secret identity. While watching it all through the broth simmering in her cauldron, Madame Dragonfly is ready to continue her origin story. Almost 100 years after inheriting the cabin, and still longing for her lost child, 2 men, Lenny and Bernie, arrive. They've come there looking for missing children, implying Madame Dragonfly is the one who took them. She isn't, and wants to help find them, but Lenny insists she's the one who's taken them. Now, I don't know how many of y'all eagle-eyed creators caught this, but I kind of get the feeling Lemire's doing a shout-out to a couple of the industry's legendary creators, Len Wein and Bernie Wrightson, creators of the Swamp Thing. Dragonfly reaffirms there are no children in her cabin, and not to threaten her again. Lenny's not convinced and barges in anyway, shoving Dragonfly to the side as he does, promising to find them kids. Lenny's inside, and the place is virtually empty except for all the doors to the many rooms and the many different symbols on them. The doors begin to creak open, and a myriad of decayed and rotted zombies begin to emerge, all reaching for him. Lenny screams, and Bernie calls after him. Madame Dragonfly tells him, "It's too late for your friend." Bernie demands she let his friend go, but "I cannot. The cabin has him now." He tells her, "Get back!" She doesn't, so Bernie fires on her, but to no effect. Dragonfly retaliates, firing a bolt of green energy into Bernie. He bursts into flames. Screaming in agony, Bernie dives into a nearby lake. But then, when green, deformed hands break the surface, she is startled. Okay, this next part speaks to the quirkiness of Lemire's writing. I don't know about the rest of the 1138 galaxy, but at times certain things Lemire does misses a step, or the logic seems off or without sufficient reason. Here's why. Bernie emerges from the water as a misshapen mess of roots, vines, and foliage, basically a living plant or swamp thing, a man thing, harkening back to the shout-out to Ween and Wrightson a minute ago. However, it's fair to reason that this is just the way Lemire wanted the story to go. Yes, it has its similarities or its homage to the Swamp Thing, but don't all creators do things like that? Anyway, Madame Dragonfly continues her backstory narration. She had been alone in that old cabin for a long time. But that night, fate and a miscast spell dealt a new hand. Struggling with his new physiology, all Bernie can manage is, "I am different." Dragonfly's narration continues, and she would be alone no more. In that moment, Madame Dragonfly saw this misshapen creature as something totally unexpected, something beautiful. Now, maybe it's just Lemire killing his darlings, or maybe it's just me. But there seemed to be a little bit of a setup missing from this scene. Based on the events that led up to this and the consequences of Madame Dragonfly firing her magic at Bernie in reflex to his shooting at her, I don't see how she just immediately saw the altered Bernie as a lover or life partner. I guess it's somewhat implied, and I guess for me and maybe many others, it doesn't seem like you would find something that looked like that attractive. Of course, beauty is in the eye of the beholder, and of course, we don't all see or look for beauty all the same way, if at all. And yes, there is someone for everyone, but I just feel like some of the story was edited there, leaving out some key elements. Our next interlude is with Tammy and Abe. Tammy likes good old Abe, and after dinner with his family in issue 4, she wants to take a trip with him. But we all know none of the Slamsteins can leave the boundaries of the town. But of course he can't tell Tammy that. And yet, the same question comes up that's come up 100 times since I began reading this series. Why must the Hammer team shield their secret identities from the people of this prison world? They've been there for 10 years. There doesn't seem to be any other superpowered beings around, and certainly no supervillains. So again I ask, why do Abe and the others have to hide their heroic identities from these townspeople? I mean, even after identifying the name of the town they're in, wouldn't they then be able to determine what, if any, state they're in? And even after that, what about the state and local radio and TV signals? We've seen no one in this town listening to a radio or watching TV, Wouldn't that be peculiar enough to have at least noticed in the last 10 years? And we saw how Talkie's probe was able to breach the barrier. Whereas, from what we know, none of them are allowed to pass beyond the barrier. But as Talkie's probes were mechanical and inorganic, that must mean that non-living objects could pass through the barrier to the other side. I mean, obviously we know the probe made it out and back to Spiral City. So wouldn't it have made sense for Talkie to put a message inside it, detailing who they are and what their situation is? As cool as this premise is, and as solid as it seems in some areas, logic and plausibility are sorely lacking in others. Also, who did this farm belong to before they were put there? How did this group of people just fall out of the sky, land on this farm, and automatically become its legal residents? Getting back to the inorganic thing, if this town is a replica of an American Earth town, and they know the townies can come and go as they please, did the Hammers try mailing letters to friends and allies outside of the town to see if they can make contact that way? So anyway, Abe is, hesitant towards, going on a trip with Tammy. Tammy's put off by that, and Abe hangs his head and broods over it. Madame Dragonfly sees this in her cauldron and continues her backstory. For a time, the cabin knew love as well. So after nearly 100 years, she's lonely and horny as fuck. And incidentally happens to turn this would-be savior of children into the love of her immortal life. But some indeterminate amount of time into this new romance, while sitting by the lake that spawned him, Dragonfly sees in its ripples the nightmare cataclysm the team would have to face, and warns Bernie that she would have to go with them. Now, what's funny here is that his response is just, "Hurry back, my love. I care not to live without you," versus saying, "Take me with you," or "Wherever you go, I go with you." Instead, he just accepts that she has to, and he's just going to sit and wait for her to come back. If she comes back. Which doesn't seem like she did, based on, what we've seen in the series so far. I mean, so as far as we know, she's the only one in the cabin, except for those creepy little babies we saw milling about a few issues ago. And again, Lemire can seem like such a brilliant genius at times, then turns around and does oddball stuff like that. So Dragonfly joins this battle. And though she was no hero, she fought valiantly just the same. The battle was long and hard, and we destroyed the evil known as Anti-God, or so we thought. There was a flash of light, and then we were somewhere else. But she couldn't escape the burden of the old cabin, as it too was somehow teleported onto the Hammer farm. She hoped the monster she turned lover had come along with it, but alas, she was once again alone. The cabin, her sole companion. However, there was a twist. A part of her swamp thing made the journey with her, as she later found herself once again with child. The old witch had not lied. It really was just a matter of time. But this blessing was bittersweet, as the child did not survive, and she buried it out in the woods. And in the present, Madame Dragonfly is at the site of her ill-fated child's grave when Colonel Weird pops in. It's raining. He asks her if she's responsible for it. Before she can answer, a bolt of lightning lances the sky, striking the ground a short distance away. Dragonfly doesn't seem to know what's happening, but tells Weird, "Hurry, before the others see." Now, this is kind of a strange thing to say, considering they are on some level her teammates. It makes it sound like she wants to keep whatever it is a secret from Abe and the others, even though it could be something or some way to free them all. On the spot the lightning struck, A figure appears, wearing a spacesuit similar to Weird's. She spots the two of them. Pointing at them, she says, "You! I know what you did. I know what this place is." Weird hangs back as Dragonfly closes on the figure, a black woman. She tries to calm her. She asks her name. "It's Lucy Weber. I've traveled so far. I know what you are. I know what you've done." Dragonfly urges her to calm down, telling her it's going to be all right. And then the biggest twist built into a cliffhanger you might ever read in your life. She points a finger at Lucy, Blackhammer's daughter, and says, "Forget." Lucy's eyes go blank. At the same time, green energy snakes its way into one ear and out the other, dissipating in the air. Abe, Gale, and Barbalian arrive, wondering what's going on. Now, Lucy seems confused. She asks where she is. Dragonflies answer, "It's all right, Lucy. You are home." What? And that closes us out of issue number 6 of Black Hammer, a Dark Horse Comics publication, written by Jeff Lemire, drawn by Ornery Dean Ormston, and colored by Dystopian Dave Stewart. What do you all think? What was your reaction to the ending of this issue? I know I was shocked like Silk the Shocker. Wow. And it seems my suspicions about Madame Dragonfly were correct. Remember that thing with the hand over the cauldron in issue number 4? I mean, Lucy calls her out, and right away she makes her forget? Why? What is Madame Dragonfly trying to hide? Let me know what you think in the comments below, and we'll make a discussion out of it. I knew she had something to do with this. I just knew it. Okay, well, that's it for this issue. You know what to do with the comments, questions, moans, and groans. If you like this content, don't forget to subscribe below. Hit that notification bell. Take care of yourselves, be kind to each other, and as always, have a good read.